Increasing Inclusivity in the Higher Education Classroom by Charles L. Burns, Jr., School of Education, Liberty University. Teaching at Its Best by Zacharczyk and Nielsen state on page 99, inclusivity is not solely an issue of race and ethnicity. Although those are both certainly part of inclusive teaching, inclusivity pertains to all characteristics and all people. Race, ethnicity, gender, political affiliation, socioeconomic status, ideology, employment status, neurodivergence, first-generation college student status, transportation issues, food or housing uncertainties, chronic, acute, or invisible physical and psychological conditions. Basically, what we're trying to say is that each and every student is an individual. They come with their own set of inclusivity issues. However, American higher education has progressively become more polarized. Lewig and Craig state institutions of higher learning are at the center of American sociocultural polarization. This has been true for many, many decades in American higher education. Abrams states, polarization and divisiveness brings about self-censoring in the majority of students in American colleges and universities. This study wasn't selective as to which students were being self-censoring. You might expect that maybe white students would self-censor more, or conservative issues would self-censor more. What they found was it was broad-based and widespread across college campuses. Finally, COVID-19 and geopolitical tensions like Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and now the conflict between Israel and Hamas have exacerbated any underlying tensions that were already present in American higher education. At Southern Virginia University, diversity doesn't show up in the student and faculty populations. There are some students of color, some students from minoritized and marginalized populations, but the majority are Latter-day Saints, the majority are white, and in fact the faculty has no persons of color at all within the permanent full-time faculty. Many of the minority students simply do not see themselves in the faculty. A little bit in the staff. There are some people of color in the staff, but not very many. Many of these minority students may feel excluded or singled out because they're readily noticeable. Zacharczyk and Nielsen again states some more inclusivity issues, such as we basically want to facilitate the learning of each student. They also state that we should consider student learning objectives more as the characteristics or life experiences that we want each individual student to have. We should look at those as what kind of people do we want to make out of our students? What kind of people do we want to see them go into the world as? Every student deserves the chance to be successful. We as faculty have to make that happen. We have to ensure all students have a fair chance to understand, learn, remember, and demonstrate the knowledge and characteristics that we want to instill. This implementation process comes from work of McDonald and others with the geological sciences and how to implement inclusivity and diversity into those sciences, because that is also a field that is similarly reflective of what happens at SVU, in that field is mostly men, mostly white. So how did they do it? Well, they first formed a group that would learn through workshops the material to help others implement better diversity and inclusivity practices. At SVU, we look at the Professional Development Committee, and we're going to ask representatives from each of the departments to come in and to learn these same things by reading certain text selections from the Teaching at Its Best textbook. And then we're going to ask them, in conjunction with the Professional Development Committee, to construct the strategy workshops. From that phase, we're going to have these representatives actually attend the workshops that they help create, and then choose and enact some of those strategies throughout their work, the ones that they think fit best or would help them out best in their work, so that they are then able to go on to the next phase, which is to introduce these practices in workshops to the faculty pedagogy group. The pedagogy group will read the selected text. They will attend the workshops, which are done weekly, and they will then choose and enact the strategies. The difference during this implementation process is that the faculty pedagogy group will include all faculty, as opposed to just new faculty, which is the traditional process, but now we want all faculty to be involved. Phase 1, the development of the strategy workshops, will occur during the fall of 2024. This will give the Professional Development Committee and its representatives to work out the kinks and come up with a good set of strategies. Phase 2 will occur in the spring of 2025. Those representatives will then go back through the workshops They will then become the presenters for the faculty pedagogy group, but they will select those things that they're more interested in or take more time to implement in their work. And then finally, phase 3 will begin in the fall of 2025, where the faculty pedagogy groups will have their workshops by the selected facilitators for all faculty. We then can implement this on an annual basis for new faculty and faculty, of course, as we usually do, that are returning in the fall semester and want to engage in it further. In phase 1, what we're looking at is a couple weeks in late August, after we get back from our summer break. The Professional Development Committee will write up a proposal and submit that to the provost for her approval. Then from September through October, the provost will then ask for faculty representatives from each of the departments to undergo the initial training. The Professional Development Committee will work with the provost office to create the instructional materials, conduct workshops, and begin classroom integration, which will occur during the spring. We will need about 20 copies of Teaching at Its Best, and those will cost about $50 a piece. The faculty representatives will read selected portions of that text and give input to the committee. Slide presentations will be created for the material from the text, and class handouts and examples will also be created at this time. Faculty representatives will then review materials as they're made and give suggestions back to the committee. We'll probably need some IT technical assistance for this in addition to the other responsible parties, because they will help upload and take care of the technical aspects of making this material available. Finally, the committee will then edit and review material, submit the final program to the provost for approval for spring implementation of Phase 2. In Phase 2, the committee will conduct the weekly workshops as we would do in the regular pedagogy groups. They'll hand out materials to faculty representatives, and we'll also ask the representatives to complete surveys and evaluations for each workshop and give recommendations for improvement at that time. At the end of the spring semester, the committee will finish its review of surveys and evaluations, make further recommendations for changes to the provost. She will then review the recommendations, institute any necessary changes, and then the revised program will be sent back to the committee and representatives for summer review and evaluation in preparation for implementation during the fall for Phase 3. During the summer, the committee and representatives review, evaluate the program, forward any suggestions to each other, to the provost, so that it will be ready for implementation when fall 2025 gets around. In fall 2025, the first couple of weeks before classes start, we'll get 40 more copies of the Teaching at Its Best. Those will be distributed to all full-time and part-time faculty. We do not want them to be excluded because we want to upgrade all of our faculty with inclusivity pedagogy, and we want this to be university-wide to uplift the entire university. Also need to create the slide presentations if they hadn't already been created. IT will help and assist in getting those out as part of the faculty pedagogy group. And then we'll want class handouts and examples, mostly electronic, but there will be some need for some faculty, like adjunct faculty. They may want to have some paper handouts, and we'll get a survey and find out how much that we'll need. And then in the fall of 2025, the representatives that were chosen will conduct their selected workshops for the faculty pedagogy group, and at the end of the semester, we'll go through self-evaluation and prepare for future years. Initial costs are estimated to be $1,000 for Phase 1 and $2,000 for Phase 2 to get the texts at about $50 a piece. There are no additional costs during Phase 2. Handouts, examples, printing, copying, binding, copyright, IT, additional IT work and such. We approximate the cost $1,000 in Phase 1 and $2,000 in Phase 2, with the total implementation of the program over those 3 semesters at $6,000. So what are some parts of this inclusivity training? Well, first we'll look at there are several parts that you start out with inclusivity in your syllabus. You will have to get students to read those, like have a quiz at the beginning of the semester, having them look into and read the syllabus. But there are 4 things that you want to focus on. Number 1, create an inclusive tone in your syllabus, just to start out with. Speak of working together with the students to accomplish their goals. Use I and we constructions rather than you. You puts the burden all on them. I and we says, I'm in it with you. Let's work together. And This lets the students know that you want them to succeed, which we do. Include diversity, inclusivity, and support statements in your syllabus. These types of statements will demonstrate to your students that these issues are important to you. Diversity and inclusion statements will clearly signal that your course is to be an environment for all students, and that you want all students to have the best opportunity to learn and excel in your class. Though we usually do it in our syllabi, point out campus resources. There are a vast number of resources, not only from student services, but they have their coaches, they have you, they have the provost office, they have library resources, mental health resources. They need to know that all those things are out there and available. But while you're doing all this warm and fuzzy stuff in your syllabi, remember that they can still be rigorous. They can still point to a rigorous academic environment that is human, that is interested in them, that wants them to succeed, and gives your students the feeling that you are in it for them and for each and every student as an individual. Start the first day with introductions in the classroom. I was used to basically sharing who I was, what my experiences were, and what the course was all about. But as I've studied this, I found that actually getting the students to briefly introduce who they are, what their preferred name is that they want to be called, which isn't always what's on the roster, sharing something about themselves that makes others comfortable with them. One of the things I like to do at SVU is to ask them what region of the country they're from, and talk about regional differences and how our country has these regional cultures. And we have a little bit of fun with that also. Don't share a whole lot of detailed information about the course and the material. They'll get that. But let them know where you come from, and that you have a lot of knowledge in the field, but even though you're considered the expert, but you're here to learn also. Even in my field in chemistry, things are changing in chemistry. There are things that I don't know. We're learning more, which I didn't think was possible. I thought we knew it all. Once we got to 118 elements, that was it. We're done. Learn the students' names and use them. One of the unfortunate things is we don't get a roster of their names and their pictures until a day or so before class. But I've had other faculty members that like to have them stand and get their picture with their preferred name on a little placard sometime during the first week of class. That way they can look at the pictures and get to know them rather quickly. They love it when you use their name. It makes them feel like it's personal and it's about them. Treat students as individuals. They don't belong to a group or a class. They aren't female or male. They aren't black, white, Pacific Islander, Hawaiian. Those aren't who they are. That's part of who they are, but it's not all of who they are. Who they are, as we have learned recently, is that they are children of God. They are individuals. Let's treat them as such. When I saw the section on warming up cold calling, I got chills. No pun intended there. I did cold calling when I was younger, and it's horrible. It's terrible. A lot of people are good at it. I was not good at it. But basically it means asking students who haven't raised their hand, or asking students who haven't spoken out. There are a lot of students that won't respond until you call upon them. you want to engage them so that they just don't sit back there in their introverted shell for some of them, and then leave the classroom thinking, well, they didn't even notice me. Well, how do you warm that up? Basically, it means doing something like standing next to the student and asking them their opinion. Open it up and say, you know, John or Susan, we hear from you a lot. Are there anybody else who has things to say? I like to go around the classroom and kind of separate them out into little units and ask this little unit, there's a couple of students at these two desks together. Okay, what do you all think? It kind of softens the blow because it doesn't point out one or the other, and then each one of them can speak. And then finally, warm up the chilly environment. Unfortunately, the data shows us that women are treated subtly different than men. Men more often tend to participate. They want to be heard. Sometimes they'll talk over women. We have to watch that in our classrooms and be leaders and help warm up those who don't want to speak or are intimidated by speaking, as we would anybody else that we're talking to. We want to hear everybody's opinion, and women tend to get discounted in the classroom. Inclusivity in the course includes things such as building more structure. It might seem counterintuitive to have more things going on in your class, but I studied a guy by the name of Tony Buzan. I got 3 of his books a few years ago. Actually, more than a few, more like about 20 years ago, from a neighbor who was the U.S. memory champion. So it talked about memory and how people learn and how you can memorize things. And one of the things that it talked about was in the classroom, you got them for the first 15 minutes of class. You don't have them for the next 20 to 30 minutes of class. And then you got them for the last 5 to 10 minutes of class. You got to break that up. It helps build that inclusivity because now you're not calling on the same students multiple times, and you're giving other students a chance to show their expertise, what they are learning, what they know, who they are in the classroom. Second, provide safe feedback channels. Anonymous feedback channels are a great way to get ongoing feedback. We want to be reflective instructors. We want to better our courses, and we can do it on the fly. If someone's telling us, hey, it looks like you're not calling on certain people, or I'm one of those people that you're not calling on, would you please call on me? I want to say something, but I'm afraid to. Give them that channel to do it, but to do it anonymously if they want to. A lot of us use discussion prompts and give examples. We want those prompts to have more inclusive language. Watch using male-oriented terms frequently. If we can use they or them, that's a little more neutral. So find ways in your discussion prompts and the examples that go with them to invite a bigger sampling of, or a bigger cohort. And finally, model the inclusive language yourself. Gender neutral terms tend to, again, invite inclusion. My son, as a Latter-day Saint, struggles with same-sex attraction. He sometimes appreciates those they, them terms, because he's not quite sure where he's at as far as those struggles go. And while he was at BYU, he felt a lot of pushback and exclusion because he spent his time there not feeling accepted for who he was. Inclusivity in student relations basically says, recognize that your students have fears. They come into the classroom, some of them are gung-ho, some of them are extroverts, some of them have high self-efficacy in your field, but some of them are very tentative. When I went to college, science, mathematics, computers, those were my things. But English and social sciences, I dreaded going to those classes. And sometimes my fears were realized in the classroom. So recognize that students have fears, but they also have fears outside of the classroom. Sometimes they fear for their safety. They have fears because they're coming to Virginia and they're from, let's say, New Mexico. It's different. They come from a big city and now they're in rural parts of Virginia where you can walk to almost everywhere you need to go. It's different. There are fears there. Remind students, especially the ones that you see are struggling, that everyone struggles. I often mention to students that come in and they're really struggling that when I was an undergraduate like they are, I failed my first writing assignment in English. I was devastated, but I got past it. I worked with other students, I worked with the faculty, and I worked with one of the TAs who was a senior getting ready to graduate, worked with him to find out how I could do better, but I struggled. I mean, I was lucky to get out of that course with a C because I didn't do very well at first. I didn't understand what the instructor wanted. If there are conflicts in the classroom, address them immediately. Don't let them fester. If students bring something up to you, handle it as soon as possible. If you can't handle it and it needs to go up the chain or you need to call in security, do that. But don't let students fester with their problems. I haven't seen it at SVU, but I saw it whenever I was at Wake Tech. Conflicts between students just kind of go and go, and they still sit next to each other. That I didn't understand, but if you see it, address it. And finally, offer to help your students. Find ways of helping them. One of the things that I was introduced to just recently was doing a poll, finding out when students were available for office hours and setting up evening office hours that fit my schedule and fit most of their schedule. I get more students that way. They feel like I'm making efforts to help them and they come along for the journey also. Well, that wraps our training. Here are the references so you can go and read about the things that I was reading for preparing this set of slides and introducing this program to SVU.